and I'd like to introduce our speaker that we have lined up for today. So today, our presenter is Emmy Quebedeaux. Emmy is a Master of Social Work student at Louisiana State University. She has experience in school, community, adoption, domestic violence, child welfare, parenting education, and aging. Her interests revolve around trauma, attachment, and relationship issues, where she seeks to provide compassionate support and foster meaningful connections. Emma is committed to supporting vulnerable populations, focusing on child welfare, adoption, and geriatrics. Whether working with families as a whole or focusing on the unique needs of children and older adults, Emma is motivated to make a positive impact and advocate for lasting change in the lives of those she served. It's very special to have Emma here today. She is actually one of our current interns here at Alzheimer Services and will be graduating very soon and spreading her knowledge and her experience throughout the community. So, thank you so much, Emma, for being here today, and I'll let you take it from here.
Okay. Alrighty. So good afternoon, everyone. So my presentation is titled If Tomorrow Came Too Soon, Planning Before Panic. So it's basically just going to be all about planning before a crisis occurs. So Ellen did a wonderful job on my introduction, so thank you. All right, so my agenda for today is just I'm going to do a brief introduction and then go over the objectives of today. We'll go through some scenarios together and then we will talk about planning and do a Q&A at the very end. All right, so as she said, I am a current intern here at Alzheimer's Services. Um, and I do have a variety of experiences, but I'm most interested in people, especially how early experiences, including trauma and attachment, shape the way we connect with others across the lifespan. And I think it's truly a privilege to work with families as a whole. All right. So, throughout this presentation, you will be able to engage in what if scenarios, explore decisions that other people or loved ones may face. Participants will be able to recognize and differentiate different types of end of life planning. Participants will also be able to understand the importance of planning early. Um, and then we will also talk about how different cultures view end of life and the differences across the world. All right, so we're going to do a few polls. Um, all right, so first poll is what if my loved one couldn't make decisions tomorrow? Would I be ready? All right, and I'll give y'all about a minute to answer. All righty, so it looks like most everyone answered, and it looks like about 59% are not ready to make those decisions, and 41% are ready. So I'm gonna kind of help teach you how you can also prepare yourself for these. All right. All right, so now we're going to get into some scenarios. I ask everyone to try and put themselves in these situations as best you can. I know it can be kind of hard because you might not be in that phase of life right now, but if you could just try your best, and then we're going to go through each of them. All right, so scenario one, you get a call at 8 a.m. Your loved one is hospitalized and confused. Doctors need consent today. All right, so the first poll is, are you prepared for this type of situation? All right, and I'll give you all about a minute to answer this. So it looks like most everyone has answered, and the majority of everyone said yes, they are ready for this type of situation. Okay. So the next question for this scenario is, do you know who is legally allowed to make decisions? All right, I'll give you all a little time to answer that one. All right, so it looks like most of y'all also know who is allowed to make those decisions. And then the last poll for this scenario is, do you know where important documents are located? All right, looks like most of y'all also know where most of those documents are. Alrighty. Okay, so back to scenario one. So in this scenario, your loved one is unable to consent due to confusion, and they need someone to make decisions for them. So with a plan in place, the pre-selected power of attorney would make those decisions. Without a plan or a power of attorney in place, the default is usually the next of kin. And I just want you to think about this like rhetorically. What if you don't agree with the next of kin? And what if they don't make decisions that your loved one would want? So just keep those in mind. All right, second scenario. An older adult living alone is brought to the hospital after a fall. They are confused and unable to make decisions. There is no spouse, no children, and no listed emergency contact. No advanced directive or power of attorney can be found. So now we're going to answer some polls. The first one says, if this were you, would your values or wishes be known? All right, I'll give you all a second to answer that. All right. Share those results with y'all. Okay. And then another poll for the scenario. If this were you, would you want a stranger making decisions about medical care, where you live, and end of life? All right, so everyone answered no to that question. Okay, so let's talk about scenario two. So in this scenario, the hospital cannot release information to friends or neighbors. A court would appoint a public guardian or conservator to make these decisions, and ultimately, life or death decisions are made by the state. And sometimes that can take a while to get to a decision. As we all know, things tend to go slow, with documents and all of those things. All right. So last scenario, a person is recently diagnosed with early stage dementia. At the time, they are still living independently, managing daily life, and feel capable of making their own decisions. They put off planning. Months later, doctors determine the person is no longer able to make informed decisions. All right. The first poll is, do you or your loved ones have a plan in place? Alrighty, looks like most everyone has a plan in place, which is good. And then could you name the decision maker right now? Let me get that one pulled up. All right, it looks like most people can name their decision maker. All right. So we're going to talk about scenario three. So in this scenario, the individual is not allowed to make their own decisions, even if they do have a preference. This is due to not being of sound mind, which is usually determined by a physician. And as they don't have a plan in place prior to being determined of not having sound mind, decisions and plans will be made on their behalf by whomever is selected. And at this point, the person may not even get to choose who they would like to make those decisions. All right, so now we're going to get into different types of planning. So, some important decisions to plan for are medical and healthcare decisions, financial and legal, living arrangements and care needs, and then personal, cultural, and spiritual decisions. All right. So, an advance directive is a legal form that guides future medical care. This includes living wills, power of attorneys, do not resuscitate orders, and organ and tissue donation. So, living wills, that basically just kind of outlines end of life treatments and medical preferences. Some treatments include ventilation, feeding tubes, and CPR. So, a quick example is say a patient diagnosed with COPD is nearing the end of their life. They may refuse intubation, but still request oxygen based on their preferences for comfort versus life extending measures. And then power of attorneys, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on. So we're going to discuss durable power of attorney and a medical power of attorney. So the reason a general power of attorney is not up here is because that terminates if the principal becomes incapacitated, which is why it is not on this chart. So it does not have really anything to do with end of life. Um, so a durable power of attorney can make medical, financial, and personal decisions on your behalf if you become incapacitated. It can be as broad or as limited as the principal decides. So ultimately, you can give them as much or as little power to make decisions on whatever you would like. That's up to you. And then it can also be used when the principal is fully functioning or incapacitated. So an example of this would be an older adult is living with dementia, but they're not incapacitated. Someone can help make decisions for them. Now, on the other hand, a medical power of attorney can make only medical decisions on your behalf. This person is also known as your healthcare proxy. They are limited to healthcare decisions, which includes treatment choices, medical procedures, and end of life care. This goes into effect only when the principal is incapacitated. So that means they might be in a coma, on life support, something of that nature. And then if you have both a durable and a medical power of attorney, they do not have to be the same person. If you have a separate medical power of attorney, the durable power of attorney will not make any medical decisions on your behalf. And then it's also important to know that you can list more than one person on these documents. In the event that your first choice cannot make those decisions, they may pass away before you do, or they might be separated from you and you haven't updated your documentation. All right, so next we are going to talk about do not resuscitate. So it's commonly abbreviated as a DNR. So a DNR is a type of advanced care directive that instructs healthcare providers to withhold life-saving measures if the patient's heart or their breathing stops. So it refers specifically to the decision to reject life-sustaining interventions, which includes cardiopulmonary resuscitation and electrocardioversion. So that's the use of CPR or an AED machine to restart the heart or breathing. So that document basically states that if the patient stops breathing or their heart stops beating, to let them pass along and not attempt to resuscitate them. And the last healthcare decision we have today is organ and tissue donation. So, organ and tissue donation is a life-saving gift where individuals can donate organs or tissues after death, and in some cases while living. This can help restore health and improve the quality of life for others, and that is a personal decision that you have to make for yourself. And you will also see it indicated on your driver's license if you are a organ donor or not. All right, so now we're going to get into the financial and legal decisions. So take a moment to think about who would handle your responsibilities if you couldn't. Who would pay your bills, your mortgage, your everyday expenses? Who would manage your will, trust, or property? And if you have dependents, who would step in to care for them? It's also important to plan ahead for key financial and legal matters. So this includes setting up a financial power of attorney that can either be a general or a durable, but we always recommend doing a durable. So someone that you trust can make decisions on your behalf. Make sure a trusted person can access important information like bank accounts, passwords, and critical documents, and they know where they're located. You'll also want to review your insurance policies to ensure they're up to date and confirm that your beneficiaries are correctly listed. And if you have children or dependents under the age of 18, it's essential to designate an alternate guardian to ensure that they are cared for and not placed into state custody. All right, so now we're going to get into some living arrangements. So, in a home health environment, supportive services are provided in the patient's home. So this ranges from skilled nursing to activities of daily living, and it's usually ordered by a physician and covered by insurance for a specific period of time. So an example of this is when a patient recovering from hip replacement surgery is discharged from the hospital but still needs assistance. Their physician may order home health services, which include visits from a skilled nurse to manage medications and or a home health aide to help with daily activities like bathing, dressing, and meal preparation. These services are usually covered by insurance while the patient regains their independence. So, in-home care is a private pay and non-medical service that aims to support activities of daily living and provide companionship. All right, so palliative care focuses on relieving symptoms and improving quality of life. This is usually reserved for those with serious illness and can coincide with curative treatment. So someone can decide to continue treatment while also emphasizing their comfort. And then we're going to move on to hospice. So hospice care essentially is comfort care. For those with a limited life expectancy, it's usually about 6 months or less, who are not receiving treatment. So an example to differentiate between palliative and hospital is this. Let's say we have two patients with cancer. One chooses to stop chemo because it's no longer working. The other chooses to continue despite it not working. Both would like to improve the quality of their life. The patient who stops chemo would go into hospice care. The one who's continuing chemo and treatment would go into palliative care. All right. So in a nursing home setting, residents receive 24/7 skilled nursing care from a licensed staff who monitor health conditions, administer medications, and respond to medical needs at any time, day or night. In addition to medical care, residents are supported with activities of daily living, such as bathing, dressing, eating, and mobility, along with access to various rehabilitation services, social activities, and long-term care for chronic conditions. And then the difference for assisted living is that These are residential communities with support for daily activities. 24/7 skilled nursing is not provided, but some facilities do have varying levels of care and may include a memory unit for those with dementia. And lastly, we have a personal care home. So these are smaller facilities in a home-like setting for about 8 to 10 residents at a time. Care is much more personalized with smaller staff to client ratio. And these facilities aid with activities of daily living, such as bathing, dressing, and medication. They do not provide any skilled nursing, but sometimes nurses can come in to manage medicine. All right. So now let's think about personal, cultural, and spiritual decisions. Consider your preferences for a funeral or memorial service, whether you want to be buried or cremated. Reflect on any religious or spiritual practices that are important to you and how you would like those to be honored. It's also meaningful to think about the legacy you want to leave behind. This could include writing letters to loved ones, creating memory projects, or even preparing an ethical will to share your values, beliefs, and life lessons with others. So, an ethical will is not anything that has to be notarized or signed. It's simply you want to write stuff down or put something away so that, relatives, family, friends, all of them can have access to it later, about what you think is important in life, what you want to pass on to them. And then we will get more into culture after we briefly cover the importance of planning early, and then we will watch a short video. So, planning early is important because it helps protect your dignity and ensures your wishes are respected. It allows you to preserve your choice about your care, finances, and personal decisions. It also significantly reduces stress and uncertainty, not just for you, but for your family and friends, by giving them clear guidance and preventing difficult decisions during emotional times. All right, and then we have this short video. Let's see if I can get it to play. Let me go back. Ellen, I think I might need your help.
I'm on my way.
Okay. Okay.
Sometimes we have to exit out of the
Okay.
presentation. And then
Oh,
we
you
need to
didn't enable it. We gotta enable content.
Okay, that's it.
There you go. Sure now. Yep. I have to put from current slide. Okay.
Good.
Think so.
Yeah.
Maybe. All right. Alrighty, so that, there we go. Ellen, I might need you to come back in here. It's now on the other screen, like the mouse. Yes. Okay. So before jumping into culture, I just want to emphasize that there are differences within cultures, and not every person from each of these cultures may view death in the same way. And I also just want to give a little disclaimer that I won't be able to cover every single culture in here. These are just kind of the main groups of cultures. All right. So the Western and individualistic cultures, so this includes United States, Canada, United Kingdom, so Great Britain, Ireland, Germany, and Scandinavia. So these cultures emphasize individual autonomy and self-determination. They commonly use advanced directives and legal documentation to guide end of life. And then Asian and Hispanic cultures are usually family centered. So these include places like China, Japan, India, the Philippines, Latin America, and family plays a central role in medical decision making. So terminal diagnosis may be withheld to preserve hope and reduce distress. And then also a fun little fact is that Hispanics are more likely to die full code, meaning that all life-preserving measures are taken regardless of the prognosis. So Islamic cultures are like the Middle East areas, Indonesia, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Egypt. They believe that death is determined by God, and care focuses on minimizing harm and ensuring comfort. Decisions often involve family and religious leaders. And then the Hindu and Buddhist cultures. This includes areas such as like India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Thailand, etc. These cultures view death as part of a natural cycle of rebirth, where suffering may be understood as karma. As a result, there is often a greater emphasis on spiritual preparation at the end of life rather than pursuing aggressive life prolonging treatments. Next, we have the African and Caribbean cultures. So, the sub-Saharan African countries such as Ghana, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Uganda, Kenya, and then we have the Caribbean countries, which includes the Bahamas, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Jamaica, Haiti, Dominican Republic, Virgin Islands, and all the many islands in the Atlantic Ocean. So, these cultures view death as a natural yet sensitive topic. They have many taboos that discourage open discussion or planning. And something interesting is that in Caribbean funerals, specifically in Jamaican, they are often delayed. So this allows relatives time to return to the island, and it also reflects the Afro-Jamaican beliefs around the soul remaining near the body for a period before leaving. So they have a tradition of 9 nights. It is a wake held on the ninth evening after death. It is believed that this is when the spirit finally departs from the body and the loved ones send off the deceased through a celebration. And if you've ever seen like videos or read up on it, it's kind of like a Mardi Gras celebration, is what it looks like. And then the last cultural group we're going to get into today is the indigenous cultures. So these are people who are like Native Americans or are in like the Alaska region. So although elders may see little need for advanced care planning, they are generally open to discussing their end of life wishes, viewing life and death as part of a spiritual continuum, as death, and they see it as like a holistic spiritual event as well. They often prefer to spend their final days with loved ones free from pain and unnecessary life prolonging machines, emphasizing family and community over the individual. Now, on the other hand, some tribes do not talk about death or terminal illness because they fear talking about it will cause it to happen. Other tribes believe discussing negative information is offensive, so that is why they refrain from talking about it. And then I lastly just kind of wanted to leave you with this quote from an African author. It says, "When you do the things in the present that you can see, you are shaping the future you are yet to see." So that is a good reminder that end of life planning is not just about the future, it's about the choices we make now to ensure our values, wishes, and dignity are honored when the time comes. And then now I'm just going to open the floor up for any questions. You're welcome to write them in the chat or raise your hand to be unmuted.
Thank you, Emma. That was a great presentation. If anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and I'd be happy to read them off for Emma. I did want to ask,
Hmm.
will you be able to share some of the references and some of
Yeah, yep, yep,
sources you used today if anybody's
yes.
interested?
Yep, those are towards, yep, right there.
Perfect. Thank you. And if I can always send them out too if
Hmm.
anybody has any questions about any particular subject you discussed today.
Okay.
We'll give it a couple minutes, see if anybody has any questions. All right. Here is one question we got, Emma, that says, where can I get information on professionals who support with long-term care planning?
Okay, so here at Alzheimer Services, we have an entire resource library full of information. If you're looking for people to help with your healthcare decisions, we can guide you on like elder law, different things like advanced care planning, and you can always come in and chat with us, and we can kind of give you some recommendations and lead you in the right direction.
Thank you. And we did have a comment come in the
Okay.
chat that says, love the acknowledgement of various cultures.
Hmm.
As social workers, we have to be open and adapt our approach. And then somebody else commented, the cultural information about various peoples was very interesting and knew nothing about most of them. So good
Wow.
insight shared on that. Okay. We have another question that came
Hmm.
in that says, my loved one is in the hospital. Is there a
Hmm.
staff person who I can talk to about long-term care planning?
I mean, if you want to talk to someone here at Alzheimer Services, you can always come and talk to Ellen, or Brooke is able to assist as well.
Thank you. Let's see. Looks like Nancy has a question. I'll
Hmm.
unmute you, Nancy, so you can share. Let's see.
Hey, I just wanted to offer another
Hmm.
idea. I'm in New Orleans,
Yeah.
at main campus at Ochsner, but if anybody has a loved one who is part of the Ochsner system or has Ochsner providers, in our palliative clinic, there is now, oh, I'm not gonna be able to think of the term, but there's, I think, I think they're calling it an advanced care planning advocate.
Hmm.
And so like the doctor can actually put in an order, I think, for the ACP advocate. I think it might be a nurse practitioner who will sit down and work on, kind of the decision making and getting the post or
Hmm.
documents in place in the chart. So that would just be an option for people who are with Ochsner at least.
That's nice. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Nancy. Okay, and Emma, when would you recommend? Another question we had says,
Mm.
when is the best time that you'd recommend to do long-term care planning for most people?
I would recommend doing it now before you need it. The sooner the better. You can always go in and update it later if your preferences change, but I would do it sooner than later because you never know when a crisis or an event may occur.
What age would you recommend starting at?
Honestly, as soon as you turn 18. I have my stuff set up. I think it's important for everyone to have their stuff set up because, you could be in your 20s and have some massive medical emergency or get in a horrific car accident, and it's important that you have your wishes and everything written down.
Thank you so much. I think that's something that, not as many people are aware of how early we can start that planning and that we can adjust it. You don't have to stick to those choices you make early in life, but it is important to advocate for yourself and, say what is important to you in case the event something ever
Mhm.
happens. Okay. And another question we have says, what pieces of long-term care planning do you feel like are most essential with the dementia diagnosis in particular?
I would say having a power of attorney, making sure that the person with dementia is, comfortable and trust the person they select, so that when decisions are being made, if they're not of sound mind at that point, they feel comfortable and confident that the person they chose will make the decisions that they want.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple more for you that have
Okay.
come in. Says, what should I do if I am estranged from my parents, but
Mhm.
I would be their primary care partner should an emergency happen? I
Okay.
don't know any of their financial or medical information and could use some guidance on kind of where to start.
Okay. So that one's kind of a complicated situation. Um, So I don't know whether you're estranged because that was a personal choice you made or maybe your parents made. But if you are the next of kin, I think it's important to at least try to have a conversation with your parents if that's at all possible. If not, you could possibly speak with like an elder law attorney, just to see what your options are moving forward.
Okay, thank you. And then the last one we have right now says, are there guidebooks or checklists on where I can organize my long-term care planning?
So there are some stuff out there. We do have like example forms and stuff as well. And then we have something called Five Wishes, which you can list out the wishes and make sure you're like up to date with all of your important documents.
Thank you. And I was going to share too, we actually have a care partner binder here at Alzheimer Services that people can come and pick up. And it sort of prompts you of what types of documents are important to have and gives you a space to store them. Even comes with the binder and all of the supplies inside too. So that can kind of help with that same goal. And then in the chat, I see somebody else shared. I was told I had to buy long-term care insurance by 80 years old. I wish I had started earlier because it was very expensive at 80, and the interview for current competence was very intensive. Thank you for sharing that, Miss Donna. It looks like that's all the
Mhm.
questions we have in the chat, Emma. I think you did an
Okay.
awesome job of this presentation, very informative and a lot of good cultural insight as well, which is something we don't often get, I think, in this conversation. So fantastic job sharing all of that. And thank you so much to everyone who joined us today. If you think of any other questions for Emma, feel free to reach out to me or respond to that follow-up email that we'll send. And thank y'all so much. Hope everybody has a great afternoon. Emma, you might have to end the meeting on your
Okay.
end.
Okay.